Okay, call the meeting to order, and shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
David, you want to announce the coverage?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Montecito Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. the South Coast, Lompoc, Salinas Valley, San Maria, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcasts of Montecito Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays after 5 p.m. on CSB TV, Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Would you like me to move on to the roll call?
Yes, please.
All right. Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Senauer,
Here.
Commissioner Stahl,
Here.
and Chair Police.
Here.
And for the, and for the record, Commissioner Kupiak will be absent today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Good morning, Chair, members of the Commission. In regards to the status of our agenda today, we have two items. The first one is a lot line adjustment, and the second one is a development plan. Staff and the applicants are ready to present on those items. And then we did continue the much anticipated and much awaited Brown Act teleconferencing training on the agenda today. That concludes the status of the agenda. I can move to the projection report, Mr. Chair, if you like.
Please.
So before I go into the projection report, there's some information for the Planning Commission to consider. Beginning in July, actually July 19th, this hearing room will be closed for upgrades and some renovation. And it is anticipated to be back online, hopefully in November. And so for those intervening months, we will need to find another location. The hearing room, the Board of Supervisors hearing room will also be offline. So the board, I believe the board and the County Planning Commission will be convening in the Santa Maria hearing room for those months. We're working, Mr. Villalobos and I are working on finding a location for the Montecito Planning Commission for those months. Part of that arrangement is coordinating with CSB TV because these hearings are broadcast live. So that factors in. So today we would recommend, looking at the projection report, that we actually canceled the hearing on the 19th of July. That has no items projected this time, so that would be fine. And then there is one item projected for August, which is a track map. I'd recommend we leave that on there for right now. Part of our encouragement to staff and the commission is that we would like to consolidate the items on the agendas in the future to make it more efficient, and so that way we don't have to be in an alternate location for hearings for one item.
Let me pose this question to both of you, but it doesn't seem like for an hour-and-a-half meeting, we should go through this expense for one item to have this meeting in August. So unless we get more on the calendar, I just don't know whether this makes any sense for us to do that, because I think we should be more fiscally conservative and, you know, try to, like you said, couple these items. Does anybody else have a comment on that?
I'm game for that. I had a separate comment.
Go ahead.
Would it be possible for us all to go back to our basements and have you all do it in Santa Maria?
Nope.
I mean, I know you have all the cameras and the stuff that you guys do, but for us to all make it a remodeling emergency?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Miller, short answer is no. And Councilor Pettit will expound on that later today in the training. But due to the change in the Brown Act rules and the coming out of COVID, those provisions are no longer available to us to go back to our basements.
A question, please. So why do both sites, locations, this location and on the fourth floor it all needs to be done at the same time? Is that correct? Whatever they're doing?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Senauer, that is correct. Part of it has to do with and I'm not an expert on this, their wiring. This hearing room is connected also with the hearing room upstairs. So bringing both hearing rooms down allows them the ability to make the upgrades and the wiring and the video cameras to make the magic work, in short answer. And CSB TV is part of that.
So, Mr. Villalobos, if you have options that you're still contemplating where we might be able to find a place, is that true?
Yes, but, this is, as Mr. Wilson, Secretary Wilson indicated, like, we do need the input of CSBTV because MPC is unique in its requirements for the hearing, so we can't just stuff you in a, a supply closet and have a meeting there.
Well, that's nice of you to consider not doing that. Okay, well, with that news, I guess we'll wait, and Mr. Wilson, you could tell us if something else gets added, or if you can care to move that down to September. We'll let you work on that, huh?
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, for today, if we could take a motion and take an action on canceling July 19.
Okay.
And then on August, I would recommend just leaving that in play right now. And I'll work with staff on identifying if there's other items to go on that hearing. Part of the concern is if we don't have additional items for that hearing and/or September, I don't really want to hold the applicants hostage to move it to September if it's still only going to be one item. So
Right.
might as well hear it, but then cancel September.
If there's anyone that's out there that could be, advanced even sooner, like maybe the Nets, if you can get these guys to show up, if they get their act together, it seems like they're progressing despite some of the negative feedback we've been hearing, that they might be able to show up in August. I just get that out of the way. I'm just saying, grouping something, whether it's August or September, just packaging. Anyway, that's enough said for that.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, so we'll take a motion on July, and
Okay.
then on August, if we do cancel it, it'll be how we've done it previously, where Mr. Villalobos will just cancel it in the hearing room, and we'll notify the commissioners that we won't be holding a hearing.
I make a motion to shirk our appointed responsibilities for the month of July.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. I guess that finishes that off. Thank you, David. Public comments? So do we have any?
Should and do are two things, right? But I have not received any requests to speak on this portion of the agenda.
Okay. So I guess we'll just move on then to the Commissioner's informational report. Anybody want to speak?
I have a short comment with the activity of Caltrans in the Montecito area, particularly the roundabout at Olive Mill. There's some pedestrian concerns. I've received a couple calls. I did go out myself and stand there for about 15 minutes, and the roundabout has stop signs entering at each intersection now. But once you get on the roundabout, you skirt around, and at CVR, the crosswalk, when people shoot out of the roundabout now without a stop sign, they're not seeing pedestrians as well as they could. So I've touched base with Kirsten Ayers, and we're sort of, it's just a heads up that there seems to be this anxiousness to get through the roundabout, and the pedestrians are kind of, wait, I'm here, just slow down. So that's the only thing I have today. Thank you.
Okay. One other thing I want to bring up is regarding the 101, is that I didn't make the flood control meeting that was held at the MUS. Were you there, David? Were you part of that? Since it was on TV, I figured you'd be there. But anyway, there was a report that's been floating around that is the unofficial flood control information that would support the prospect of putting the wall in between San Isidro and Hickson. And I'm going to further develop this conversation with flood control. I haven't gone much further with it, but it's not official. It's going to take the feds maybe 18 months to approve, but the information, the data is there to support what we suspected from the pro-build-a-wall groups. So I just want to know that, let you know that that's out there, and it's going to have to be kicked around more than we already have. So I'll talk to you about possibly that agenda item at some point with maybe flood control could come and speak to us maybe in August, if we have a meeting in August, just to touch on that again, because I feel like it's sort of the most straining issue that's going on in the Montecito village, so to speak. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. So let's take a look at the minutes and see if we can get these approved. Commissioner Stahl, did you have comments that you regarding anything in the minutes?
Well, just that, when I reread them, the issue that I had when I asked for that addition to the approval was for the fire hazard.
Safety element?
Yes, the condition number 4. Was just that it had been brought to my attention through various conversations I'd had with the Fire Marshal Hazard and Fire Marshal Aaron, I can't think of his last name, Byrne, something, is that they're not part of the Microsoft Teams that the county's using, and so they're kind of being left out of the loop with discussions regarding Montecito Fire Department and Carp Summerlin Fire Department. So this addresses that issue with the further discussions about the safety element, but I would just hope that they could be included on anything regarding fire issues in Montecito.
Now, Mr. Wilson, you were telling me that they meet monthly. And I want to know is that sufficient for what you're asking or talking about? Or do you have a comment on this, David? Or do you want to comment?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So this item was brought to the County Planning Commission as well as under recommendation for the Montecito Planning Commission. It was considered, the Fire Marshal, Mr. Hazard, was here at that time. He provided additional information that I don't know if it was articulated when it was here at the Montecito Planning Commission. He indicated that they have, I believe, monthly meetings with all the fire departments. So County Fire, Montecito Fire, and Carp Fire have monthly meetings where issues as far as code updates, policy updates are discussed and brought to the attention of all the fire departments. So they're having ongoing coordination meetings amongst themselves. This issue with being on the county's Microsoft Teams or Outlook is a side issue, which Mr. Hazard acknowledged as far as communication goes, but it doesn't limit their ability to coordinate amongst themselves and be part of any policy updates that we're doing. So, and they can call in. So there's ways and avenues that they can be brought in or participate, and Mr. Hazard indicated that he'd actually brought this policy updates to that coordination meeting amongst themselves months ago. And so there is coordination happening. So some of the concerns that we felt at that hearing, I think, were addressed later on with further information.
Okay, it just didn't make sense to me that any communication or issues regarding the Montecito Fire Department or Carp Summerlin Fire Department was expected that the information be channeled through Marshal Hazard, and then it was expected that his responsibility was to disseminate it to the other fire marshals rather than directly through the county. And I appreciate that they have those monthly meetings, but it just seems like, why wouldn't they be included in anything regarding fire issues in those 2 fire districts? So that was my concern.
You still have a concern?
Well, yes.
Okay. So why don't you, if you want to, pursue it further and see if you, some kind of discussion that could be developed to satisfy. If there's somebody unhappy at these other districts, they need to voice their unhappiness, I guess. But otherwise, I think we should take a look at approving these minutes if we can.
Okay.
At the last meeting, I had asked for an item to be agendized in the future, and I didn't see that in the minutes. So
You know what it was?
it was related to the only topic I like to talk about, flood control, debris nets, and the highway.
Okay. So, what, do you know what it was? We can.
Well, so I was a little worried that I kind of monologued for a while last time, and I was going to not do it this time. But it was that having a agendizing, having flood control coming back and talking to us about what was the impact of the debris nets in terms of getting through this last winter cycle. If we, and there was a topic about kind of the time frame about when we look at the window of evaluation with the debris nets.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah, I got it.
I can go back over it all if
No,
you'd
that's all
like,
right.
but
No,
I
that's
just,
fine.
it wasn't in the minutes, and that's, I don't, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the minutes, but I want to make sure that we're not, as
Right.
part of our relocating to meeting rooms unknown, that we don't drop that off this fall,
Yeah.
because the stuff is coming, and I'd like to be educated.
Yes. You know, just like I said earlier, I think that a meeting I could have with flood control and maybe the Public Works and see, Scott said he would appear later this summer, so we could have that. I'll have a discussion, see if we can get on that August date if we have the August. If not, September, we can have those guys come back.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Miller, I do recall that discussion, and I think it doesn't really need to be in the minutes, so I think we can move forward with the minutes. However, I think it's appropriate that we keep it on our list of items to agendize. As I think that discussion, we did mention the reporting. There was a discussion on the reporting and the timing. So we may want to coordinate with our permit compliance staff and flood control. So that may come in August, September, so that we can have more of a robust discussion on the nets.
That sounds,
I don't want to rush it, but my concern is that I don't want us to get to a nets. This issue seems to be brewing. I don't want us to have a nets approval vote scheduled and then us to have a 7-hour meeting about it, because
Yeah.
we have to kind of learn.
FYI, the nets are going to be cleaned out. It's a 2-week project, and it's coming up in July. So that being cleaned out is going to make it a little bit of a different attitude, I think, maybe in the general public, but we'll find out. Anyway, minutes. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
I move to accept and approve the minutes of May 17th, 2023.
Okay, we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Shall we have a vote? We going to self-vote, or you want to help us?
Either is fine. I'm happy to do roll
Go
call
ahead.
if you like.
I'll keep you exercised. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Sanauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Stahl.
Aye.
And Chair Police.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, so now I think we are about to hear from our illustrious director, if we may.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I just have a few minor things to report on today. And we had our budget workshops last Friday for the whole county. They were able to complete the workshop in one day, so that was constructive and for them. And, you know, no issues came up regarding planning and development. Our budget was approved without a hitch. So that is good news. Again, just a reminder that the board summer break is going to be coming up. It's in July, the last week of July and the first 3 weeks of August. So they will, I believe their last hearing is July 11th. Is that right? 18th? July 18th. July 18th. And then the first hearing in August is the 22nd of August. So they have a month break. Just a quick update on the housing element. So we have been working with State HCD. We're still in the 90-day review period with them. They were able to get us a preliminary checklist of questions and comments, and we've been meeting. We've met, I think, 3 times now with the staff at HCD to address any questions and receive these initial comments. We are making changes to the draft document. We'll be posting those revisions. They will be in track changes, I think, by close of business on tomorrow. Those will remain open to the public for just review for 7 days. We have to post it for 7 days as required by state law. And then HCD is going to get us their formal letter by June 30th. So they've been working really hard to help us get through the process, and it's been so that's been very productive. So hopefully we will have a short letter that we get in June. That's the goal. Any questions?
Thanks. Regarding the housing element, what is the time parameter? When are the deadlines for rezoning, et cetera, after this period of review and public comment and back and forth from HCD, et cetera?
Right. So we can keep the adoption of the housing element and the rezones separate, right?
Okay.
And right now, they are proposed on separate tracks.
Okay.
We will get the letter on June 30th. We will review them. We will likely have to address some additional comments. I can't imagine we wouldn't. We will be doing that, and then we can resubmit to the state, and then they have another 60 days to review those changes. Hopefully, at the end of that process, they'll be ready to look to us and say, we're good to go. You can start adoption hearings just on the housing element. We also are in the midst of working on our programmatic EIR, and we're refining the schedule now. So it looks like the public comment period on that, which is primarily covering the rezones, is going to be in the fall, hopefully, early fall. But we need to be at adoption on those rezones by February 2024.
That's the date, okay.
Yeah.
February 24. Okay.
Yep.
What have you heard about rezoning in Montecito as far as employee housing and all? There's a lot of discussions in the community about different location sites that have been discussed. So can you give us a sense of anything on that?
So, Commissioner Sanauer, through the chair, and I'm sort of trying to recall exactly what we sorted out, but at the Miramar, that property is already zoned sufficiently for us to be able to do the employee housing. I believe that is also true at the Biltmore, where they want to do employee housing, but I'd have to go back and look at our map. There may be a rezoning in an area of a property that's owned by Mr. Warner over there where he would be doing the employee housing, and I think that's where we ended up with it. Yeah, yeah. And that's what we have so far.
Has Mr. Warner agreed that it would be workforce housing?
So some percentage of it, which is the same with the Miramar, some percentage of it is for his employees of the hotel.
And what would the other?
And maybe, it's possible there are other employees of his businesses that he owns around the community. I mean, he has several.
Right.
Yeah.
But what about the other percent?
So the other some percent of it will be market so that they can help fund the actual development of the housing.
Do you know what percent is?
I haven't seen a proposal yet.
Okay, thank you.
Will that be in front of us at some point, or?
That will be part of, if it gets rezoned, you will certainly be considering that.
Okay, Marshall?
I'm assuming that the programmatic EIR is a county-wide document, and so would review of the programmatic EIR come before this board or not?
I think, I'm gonna have to double check on that, Commissioner Miller, through the chair. It is, the housing element is a county-wide document,
Right.
and so typically the EIR would be considered by the County Planning Commission. But this, I mean, you all have the ability to review it during the public comment period.
To the extent that it is potentially covering, it is the EIR that would cover rezoning in Montecito, but it is not reviewed by Montecito. What is the right way for us to kind of understand that?
So Commissioner Miller, through the chair, certainly it's an informational document that's available to inform you on your recommendation about the rezone. But the Montecito Planning Commission, I don't believe, certifies that document. That's a later action by the County Planning Commission. Or the board, actually, in this case, it would be the board. So you use it as information in making a recommendation about an action that would affect the Montecito Community Plan.
But if the zoning approval has the potential to come through for our vote in the future, but it'll be governed by the allowances or not allowances of the programmatic EIR. Is that a
So
fair understanding of it?
Commissioner Miller, through the chair, the programmatic document is only informational. It gives you data about the potential impacts associated with the actions that are proposed by the rezones, right? So it'll either have mitigation measures if there are impacts, or it won't if there are no impacts anticipated associated with it. So you use that as information in whether you decide to recommend approval.
And I do track what you were saying.
Yeah.
I have had the, we'll call it privilege, to spend a fair amount of time in rooms with attorneys about a different programmatic EIR that the county put through as it relates to cannabis. And at a certain point, the County Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission felt very constrained by some of the elements of that document. Let me say, that is way outside the scope of what we talk about here. But to what, my concern is to what extent is a countywide, a programmatic EIR going to bind this board's ability to make discretionary decisions on zoning within Montecito?
So, right,
Yeah, if that-
Commissioner Miller, through the chair, if it's not analyzed in the document, if there's a proposal that you're trying to consider that was not analyzed in the document, that's how it would constrain you. So if somebody on the commission said, well, what about if we rezoned at the Upper Village? That's not something that's proposed as part of this housing element right now. And so you would not be able to take action on that idea because it was not analyzed in the EIR. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at. So the actions that you're going to be considering were proposed as part of the housing element, right? And the rezone. So we have that information that's out there in the public. That's what constrains you. The project description is what constrains you.
But if the programmatic EIR, let's say, has broad findings as it relates to traffic, and that it's somewhat definitive on the topic, we would not be able to, with our body, necessarily make strong traffic opinions that might run counter to the programmatic EIR? Is that I know I'm asking you to indulge in a hypothetical, and I apologize for that, but I'm wanting to kind of look down the road to properly understand the interaction of the programmatic EIR with our future zoning questions.
Yeah. So Commissioner Miller, through the chair, you will see the EIR in the package that comes to you. And so if you have comments about the adequacy of the analysis, or you can make recommendations or comments that will be forwarded on to the decision makers that are upstream, right? The Planning Commission and the board.
following on
But
Commissioner.
before, I'm sorry, Commissioner Center, but I recommend that if you have questions about the environmental analysis that's done, let's do that during the public comment period, right?
Okay.
That's the appropriate time, is review the sections that you're concerned about or that you're worried about, and ask questions then. I mean, we're happy to meet with you, our team is happy to meet with you.
And maybe this becomes more of a how the Brown Act stuff works, but just to clarify, what you're suggesting is that we would be involved in the public comment period when it's being reviewed by the Board of Supervisors, like upstairs, not our public comment period.
So I'm,
I just-
yeah.
is
I'm
that what you're saying?
No, I'm referring to the 45-day public comment review period that is required under CEQA for any environmental document. So it gets released, a draft gets released, the public comments on it. This commission isn't going to comment on it as a body, but as a commissioner, you can review the traffic section if that's what you're worried about. And if you have questions about it, we're happy to work with you individually.
Brian, just as a cueing for future topics today, could we take part of our Brown Act training to understand when we are not supposed to chime in with other bodies as a member of this body? Like, when it's appropriate or not appropriate for me to show up and complain to the County Planning Commission?
Commissioner Miller, through the chair, yes, I'd be happy to provide the commission, with an overview of those rules. Just to clarify, there are distinct rules that we're discussing here. So the Brown Act is concerned with meetings of the commission, so where a majority of the members are in the same place and time discussing a matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. And there are also separately procedural due process concerns about addressing bodies, considering matters that might be under consideration by your commission. So those are two separate issues that we're worried about, and I'd be happy to present to the commission on those topics.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up, as far as the programmatic EIR, it's a draft that is going to be before us. I mean, that the public at large and that we individually as commissioners can comment on. But it's a draft. It's not the final.
Correct.
And just to be clear, there is no, it is not appropriate that draft comes before us as a body to comment on or discuss in general. We can't agendize that. We can't sort of get our thoughts together as a body and have a comment. This has to be individual commissioners.
So, Commissioner Sanara, through the chair, the way the environmental review process works is that 45-day public review period happens and individuals review and comment on it. And then what will happen is an administrative final will be prepared that it has response to comments that were received during the public comment period, and then that's what comes before the decision-making bodies. Now, if a decision-making body, in particular, like if the board, this would be very unusual, but the board could not certify a document if they didn't want to, and then it would not be valid.
it does seem a little bit unusual that we as individuals can put forth our opinions, but collectively we're sitting here and we're collectively making decisions all along, even if they're advisory decisions for the Planning Commission, county, or the Board of Supervisors. So I'm a little bit like Marshall. I feel that we're kind of in the Pee-wee League here. We can only do it individually and I can't do it as a group. But if that's the rules, that's the rules. But it does seem a little bit unusual to me. That's all.
Yeah, so Commissioner Police or Mr. Chair, the document comes to your body eventually. When you're going to be considering any action, you're going to have an administrative final. You can make comments at that time about the document, and we can forward those to the decision makers. All I
Okay.
was suggesting to you is individually, if you have questions about issues that you see during the public comment period, we like to work with you
Okay,
individually.
all right, I
you know.
misunderstood that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we should proceed to, if we can, our general agenda, our main.
I have a few more things to report on.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Oh, God. I thought that was your big banana, but it's not. All right, go ahead.
So the other big news is that we are going to be going live with the Acela online permitting upgrade on July 5th, which is very exciting. So we're going to be transitioning to all online permits. But one important thing is that we are going to be halting people's ability to submit new applications for a week prior to the building and safety division and planning, so that we can make sure that we are prepared for the go-live date, because there's quite a lot of work to do as we transition. So I want to make sure I get the dates correct here. But we will stop accepting new applications this Friday at close of business. And then we will not accept new applications all next week. We will start accepting new applications on July 5th. So it's a week and a day.
But the county staff, permit enforcement, they'll all be working in the field as usual on existing permits, right?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you.
And they'll be processing permits that have already been submitted and whatnot. But we just need a little bit of a break to make sure we can make the transition as smoothly as possible in terms of new ones coming in. And there's just a couple of items on the board's agenda for the July 11th. That is potentially the Coral Casino appeal. They are trying to work out some kind of agreement. I don't know if that will happen or not, but it's currently scheduled for that date. The safety element will also be at the board on the same date, the 11th. And then on the 22nd of August, we have the Coastal Resource Mitigation Fund recommendations that go to the Board of Supervisors, and then the Exxon pipeline valve replacement appeal will be going to the board also on the 22nd of August. And that's it.
Well, thank you for your report.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions if there are follow-up questions from that earlier conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we move on then? So do you want to?
Well, why don't you read it into the...
Okay, so I'm going to read into the agenda. First item is the lot line adjustment for Hearts So Big and the Family Trust on Mesa Lane and Summit Road. So before we start that,
Ex parte, I have ex parte. David, you want to read it into the record first?
Sure, happy to do so. The following is on the hearing on the request of Heart So Big LLC and Lamborn Family Trust to consider case numbers 22 LLA 1, 23 MOD 4, and 23 CDP 29, and to determine the project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15305 of the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Ex parte?
Yes.
I'm going to recuse. I live a short distance away from this property. So I'm going to leave, and I will come back for the next agenda item.
we'll let you know.
Thank you.
when we're done. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments about this? Because I will say that even though Mr. Kubiak's not here, he and I did visit the site yesterday. Nothing dramatic about the viewing, but anybody else, Sandy? No?
I
Okay.
drive past the site with some great frequency.
Do you?
Well, it's how I avoid Coast Village Road.
Okay, well then, so I guess we turn this over to Ms. Volpe. Are you prepared to begin your comments or presentation?
Mr. Chair, yes, I am.
Okay,
right.
floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Volpe, and I am the assigned planner for the proposed Heart So Big LLC Lambourne Trust Lot Line Adjustment and Setback Modification Project. The project site is comprised of 2 legal lots located at 1188 Summit Road and 1171 Mesa Road. The parcels are located within the Montecito Community Plan and the coastal zone. The project will adjust a common lot line between the 2 existing properties. Both are developed with residential structures. The adjusted lot line will match an existing wall that runs along a landscape easement division line. The existing wall is highlighted in blue on the map, and a photo of the wall is shown in the right corner of this slide. In this slide, we see the proposed common lot line and new parcel profiles. As proposed, the lot line aligns with the existing wall and removes a panhandle portion of parcel 1, creating more uniform parcels. 0.05 acres of land will be removed from existing parcel 1, 1188 Summit Road, and gained by proposed parcel 2, 1171 Mesa Road. This slide demonstrates the existing and proposed side setback adjacent to the common lot line on parcel 2. With the adjustment of the lot line, the side setback is changed on both parcels. Parcel 1 is unaffected by this adjustment. However, the existing single-family dwelling on parcel 2 will now encroach 1 foot 8 inches into the proposed new side setback. This encroachment is less than 1% of the total side setback area. Here, highlighted in red, we can see the area of encroachment of the existing single-family dwelling. The project includes a request for a modification to reduce this required 6-foot side setback on parcel 2 to a 4-foot 2-inch side setback in this area. As conditioned, the project would comply with the comprehensive plan, including the Montecito Community Plan. Adequate services exist and currently serve the parcels. The existing lots are legal non-conforming with respect to lot area, as each lot fails to meet the minimum 2-acre size requirement. The legal non-conforming status of the subject lots will not change after implementation of the project. As reconfigured, the lots will also be non-conforming with respect to size. The project is consistent with Article 2, the Coastal Zoning Ordinance, specifically single-family residential zone lot standards, and Chapter 21, the subdivision regulations. Both lots are residentially developed and will remain so after the adjustment. With the proposed modification, the project complies with the setbacks, and as discussed in the previous slide, both lots are considered legal nonconforming as to size, since the minimum lot size for a 2E1 zone district is 2 acres. Additionally, the existing parcel 2 is legal nonconforming as to parcel width and will remain nonconforming after the lot line adjustment. The project is categorically exempt through SECRA Section 15305, allowing for minor alterations and land use limitations. The adjustment is located on relatively flat parcels and will not change the density of each parcel or create a new parcel. Staff recommends the following: to make the required findings for approval of the project, determine the project is exempt from CEQA, and approve the project subject to conditions of approval. Oh, and that concludes our presentation.
Usually the one that's requesting that. Okay, so anyone here, the chickens that are standing here, 3 of us have a comment on this adjustment, or?
I'm curious as to the why. This seems to be subtle and not, doesn't seem to be like a lot this isn't a big change by square footage, so I'm just, yeah, I guess I remain curious as to the why.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, really, there's an existing wall, 8-foot wall that exists there already. So this lot line adjustment, basically, it fixes the area like that. The wall is already located on 1171 Mesa Road. So the area that we're adjusting is already used by 1188 Summit Road. So this legalizes that area.
So
Essentially.
it's making the lines on the map look like how everybody actually lives. Is
Correct.
that- Okay.
Well, it also gives a little incentive for the change by adding something to the back of Mesa Drive's parcel. So
Oh,
it's not, I don't hate to open any cans of worms here, but it's very, it seems very straightforward, and the wall really is the issue, and I guess it's making it so appropriate, so everyone's happy. If both of them want it, so who are we to get in the way? Sandy, you have any comments? Joe, you fine?
I don't have any additional comments. I think the applicant may have prepared a quick presentation, or they wanted to maybe say a word.
Go ahead. You could keep it short, because I don't think anybody's going to tell you no.
There's not much to it. Yeah, first of all, thank you, Kathleen, for your presentation. You've been a pleasure to work with on this project, so thank you for your staff report. Yeah, the issue is the occupation does not reflect the lot lines, and we want to move the line to the wall, which is what we're using on the property. So right now, we have a lot line kind of running down the middle of the backyard. We do have a landscaping easement from 1998, and we want to move the line right to that easement line that was, recorded 25 years ago. So it's really that simple.
I don't think we have much of an issue with this, so thank you. And is there anything other further comments? Are you good?
No, I'll take your questions if you have any.
I don't think we have any. So, thank you. So, Mr. Villalobos, do you care to weigh in on a possible motion?
So before we get there, I think we need to take public comment.
We do. Why do I always want to forget that? 'Cause it's so subtle what I do.
So
Okay.
we do have two speakers online. I think one of them is here for the next item, but we do have one caller in. So if you're on telephone and you want to speak on this item, it's *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and *6 to unmute yourself. Oh, our caller just left. So I believe Mr. Brown is here for the next item. I have not received any physical speaker slips, so I believe that it's safe to assume that we don't have any requests for this item.
Okay, so we have recommended actions.
Those staff has put those on the screen.
Right. Okay, so with that in mind, without having to repeat them, they're there for us to see. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as recommended.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. We have a vote, Mr. Villalobos?
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Stahl,
Aye.
Chair Palice.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. I think we just need to get Commissioner Senauer back.
Yes, we
Should
do.
we take a 5-minute
But
break?
I want to just tell Kathleen, that was a good presentation. Thank you. And Joe, thank you for being here. And the applicant, good luck. Erasing that line that's on your cool deck there, whatever you have. All right, thank you.
I believe Commissioner Miller has requested a break. Did you?
I'm sorry. No. We'll take a break because she's not here anyway. We got a little, we'll go 5 to 10 minutes. Is that good? Thanks. We're back. Item 2 on the standard agenda is the Brown Addition Development Plan, 2350 Bella Vista Drive. So, shall we begin? Comments? Or
All right, so,
David?
why don't I read it into the record first?
please.
All right, thank you. The following is a hearing on the request of Anthony O. Brown, property owner and applicant, consider case number 22 DVP 2020, and to determine the project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to sections 15301 and 15303, the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you. Now,
Chair, I have ex parte.
yes, you may.
Yes, thank you. I did do a site visit Monday to the property and met with the agent and did a walk around, probably about a 10, 15-minute visit. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, I did a drive. Yes, go ahead.
Is this where the older woman was murdered? Like, on the road right outside of this?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so. Well, I don't know how appropriate that is, but we can,
Fair point. Let's drop that one.
okay. Mr. Wilson, are you aware of anything that we need to? Okay. All right. So, shall we have, Kevin, are you ready to go?
Mr. Chair, I just want to take a quick moment. I believe this is Kevin's first time presenting to this commission, so I wanted to introduce him. Mr. Kevin De Los Santos, he's been with the department for a couple years, and he is prepared to present the project.
We're very excited to have you here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kevin De Los Santos, and I'm the assigned planner for the proposed Brown Addition Development Plan project. The project site is located at 2350 Bella Vista Drive within the Montecito Community Plan area. The project site is located in the RMZ Zone District and the Montecito Hillside Overlay Zone. Pursuant to the MLUDC, all development proposed in the RMZ zone requires approval of a development plan. The existing parcel is 3.14 acres in size and is currently developed with a 2,514 square foot single-family dwelling, 568 square foot detached garage, a 10,000 gallon water tank, a private well, and a private shared water system. The proposed project is a request for a 390 square foot 2-story addition, door and window changes, new outdoor lighting, and an outdoor counter. As shown on the screen, in the dark gray filled in area, the proposed 2-story addition is located near the rear of the existing single-family dwelling. The existing single-family dwelling is approximately 25 feet, 10 inches in height, and the proposed addition has a max height of approximately 21 feet, 8.5 inches. As you can see on the slide, the addition matches the 2-story architectural style of the existing dwelling. As mentioned before, the project site is located within the Montecito Hillside Overlay Zone and therefore is subject to a 16-foot height limit. However, MBAR may allow adjustments to the Montecito Hillside Overlay Zone development standards. The project was reviewed by MBAR, and MBAR found that the addition was minor and in an appropriate location. MBAR was able to make the findings to support the proposed addition exceeding the 16-foot height development standard. Height is measured from existing grade. However, as shown on the screen, the applicant has provided a figure that demonstrates how the proposed addition would be less than 16 feet in height if measured from the previous natural grade of the project site. The proposed project is consistent with all applicable comprehensive plan policies, including the Montecito Community Plan. The proposed addition is compatible with the surrounding environment, consistent with Land Use Visual Resource Policy 2. The proposed addition is located near the rear of the existing dwelling and is subordinate to the natural open space characteristics of the mountains, consistent with Montecito Community Plan Visual Resource Policy 1.1. And adequate services will continue to be available to serve the project site. The proposed project complies with all applicable MLUDC requirements, specifically the RMZ zone and Montecito Hillside Overlay Zone development standards. The project complies with the intent, setbacks, and parking standards of the RMZ zone. As previously mentioned, MBAR was able to make the findings to support the proposed height of the addition. The proposed project can be found exempt through CEQA sections 15301 and 15303, which allows for additions that don't exceed 2,500 square feet and the construction of small new structures. The proposed addition can be considered small and is less than 2,500 square feet in size. Staff recommends your commission make the following actions. Make the required findings for approval, including CEQA findings, determine the project is exempt from CEQA, and approve the project, subject to the conditions included as Attachment B. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Nice presentation, very concise, together. You get an A+ on your first one. Okay, so, yes, questions here, Miss,
I was on that property several years ago, and I seem to remember that there was something a little problematic about some of the utilities. Is what they're doing here going to include sort of making those more conforming?
I think so, yeah. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the project site is served by a private shared water system and a private well. They are not adding any rooms, bedrooms, or bathrooms, and Environmental Health Services reviewed the project and found that the private shared water system can serve the project site adequately.
It wasn't so much the water, is there like ordinary gas and electric and everything in place there?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think we'd have to defer to the applicant on that one. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, it just seemed to me like that if there was issues with the existing utilities, that should be included in, what they're doing.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, staff is not aware of any issues with utilities. Edison and gas, so it is not required that they have gas to the site. They do need to have some sort of ignition for electrical, and Edison does serve the site.
anybody else?
Yes, thanks. Having visited the site, I've talked to Kevin about basically the proposed project, et cetera, et cetera. I guess my concern, when a DVP, the descriptor for it is a comprehensive review of a project. And what comes into that? In other words, when I went up there, there was no fire turnaround, there was no hammerhead, and does a comprehensive review, it was significant to my mind not to see any of that. So that is not part of our consideration today, but could you kind of give me sort of an update on how we would consider something like that in a comprehensive review for a DVP?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the development plan requires a review of the whole project site and coordinating with other departments. Montecito Fire Protection District did review the project and found that the proposed addition and the existing access would suffice for approval of the proposed addition.
Okay, thank you. Interesting.
I guess we're to assume that despite the regulations that we know of exist, that the fire department can give them an exemption and allow them to proceed as they have the last 20 years since the house has been built. But so this didn't go in front of MBAR, or did it? It did? MBAR had no comment about those facilities, I guess, either. Fire or, okay. Well, without trying to dig up something, it's not there. So, Senator, go ahead.
The last question, I've talked to Kevin about this, but I would like to just discuss it as a matter of public record. The request of a height variant, I call it variance, but it technically is not a variance, is that my understanding? is about 5.5 feet the code is 16 feet in height in HMON and in RMZ, I believe. They are requesting going to 21 feet, which the existing house height is. So they're matching that, basically. And could you just go over the two items? One, previous natural grade vis-a-vis existing grade, and how that worked with the original and with what we're seeing today, vis-a-vis the original house build and what we see today. Just briefly go over it for clarity. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, yes, the existing single-family dwelling has a max height of approximately 25 feet and 10 inches. As you can see on the screen, when the house was built, before they cut into the hillside to develop this dwelling, the previous natural grade line was higher. And height is measured from existing grade line, which would be the finished grade line on the project site. The proposed addition matches the two-story architectural element, but as the applicant demonstrated in the figure on the screen, the proposed addition would be less than 16 feet in height if measured from that previous natural grade line. And MBAR reviewed the project, and they have to make a set of findings to allow development to exceed certain development standards within the Montecito Hillside Overlay Zone, which they were able to make.
Does it satisfy you? Okay. Is the applicant here, or does anybody else want to speak on behalf? Thank you.
Chair Pulitz and Commissioners, my name is Tom Oxner. I'm the project architect. I thought the presentation was great, and I really don't have much to say. I would just like to highlight that the purpose of the addition is to make an existing second-story bedroom, which is very small, just really usable, and then downstairs to create a family room space, which the floor plan really doesn't have. It's a very small addition, as you can see, and the key thing is the location of it is tucked back against the hill and really doesn't present itself as visible from the sensitivities of hillside design that are typically watched closely. So I think given the placement, I think that was why MBAR felt comfortable with it. And then additionally, in the early days of height, they would go from the natural grade, and we've demonstrated that this is sensitive to that as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, while we were talking earlier, we didn't get a full understanding from Commissioner Sinauer's question regarding fire protection and fire access. Can you help us at all with that?
Yes, the house right now does have access. Like most homes in hillsides, they struggle with conventional slopes and turnarounds. So the fire department looks at it on a case-by-case basis. In this situation, we're not adding a bedroom, and so we're not necessarily increasing the number of occupants on the property, which oftentimes allows for a much more relaxed look at the situation of the existing accessibility. It is very common for projects that do increase, say, bedrooms and exceed a 500 square foot threshold, which I believe is one threshold we're actually below. However, in those cases, they will oftentimes ask for improvement of access, not necessarily conformance to what the actual numbers might say in terms of turnaround and grade and so forth.
To follow up on that, is the source of water the well, and is there a generator for that well, or is that just powered by Edison only?
Yes, that well, it's a shared water system, so more than one property
I see.
works with it. And yes, there is, Edison provides power to a pump that goes up and fills a cistern, and then there is gravity feed, and then a bladder tank also at the residence to increase the pressure.
Yeah, and so would the fire department need to have access to the tank, or is there a hydrant at the house?
That's a good question. I'm Typically, they have a gravity feed to a hydrant within a certain distance from the homes. I
Right.
don't recall where that is, but that's a very common requirement. I don't know about the access to the tank. It's probably there, but it wasn't something that was, that came up in the course
Yes.
of designing a review.
Does anybody else have any other questions? The applicant?
A real quick one, thank you. The extension to the north, to the hill, which is quite significant, what is the distance that is going to be shortened to the hill, which is basically a cliff? I mean, it's quite huge. So how is that being reduced, that distance to the hill?
Excuse me, are you asking what is the distance
To-
between the addition and the retaining
The
wall?
north, yes.
And the north?
In the north, yes.
I want to say it's around 7 or 8 feet
Okay.
between
Okay.
the house and that retaining
Great,
wall.
because the walkway, I didn't think was that large to begin with, and so to reduce it is significant where the walkway is going to be minimized, is that correct, the width?
Yes, we're just taking the existing house line and extending it along there. So whatever that width was, it is now, and it's a little bit longer, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Are we good? Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Your comment. And does staff have any other finishing comments?
No, Mr. Chair, I don't think we have any other
Okay,
comments.
so should we go to public comments? I didn't forget it this time.
Mr. Chair, I have not received any physical slips. And if you're joining us online, go ahead and raise your hand if you wish to speak, and I'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, so we have recommended actions, and so I would move to ask the commission if we have a motion.
I move to approve the recommended actions as set forth by the planning department.
You have a second?
I second.
Okay, Mr. Villalobos, you care to take a vote?
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Stahl,
Aye.
Chair Police.
Aye,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. And you did a nice job on your initial flight, and hopefully you come back to Earth now. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think our illustrious, I should use that word twice today, I shouldn't say that, our dynamic attorney, sounds better. Brian, I think you're going to be up next, is that correct? No. All right, I don't see a duplex anywhere, but. So we're gonna move to item 3, the Brown Act teleconferencing. So how much time do you need, Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Chair, depending on how many questions I receive, we should be done in less than 30 minutes.
So are we all good to stick in and no more breaks and complete? Okay, and so we'll see. Mr. Wilson, are you set to go here too? You're good? Okay. Well, let's get started.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Pettit reminded me that they need to read an item into the record, just very
Oh,
quickly.
yes, that'd be great.
So the Montecito Planning Commission will receive a training from County Council on Brown Act teleconferencing rules.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Brian Pettit with County Council's office. Nice to be with you here today. As you know, there are some new teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act, and so I've been asked to take some time and present a training on both the new rules and also the existing rules. So at the end of this training, you should have a comprehensive understanding of the current teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act. Feel free to jump in with questions, and away we go. So we have to start with the basic rule, always under the Brown Act, which is that all meetings of a legislative body of a local agency shall be open and public. The exceptions are few and narrowly construed. And today, the teleconferencing rules really implicate that, that third bullet there, that meetings have to be open and public. So here are some of the rules that ensure that those meetings are open and public. The agenda must identify the meeting time and place. The meeting has to be held within the body's jurisdictional boundaries, has to be freely accessible to members of the public, and then the rights of the public include the right to attend, the right to address and comment on items, the right to record, the right to inspect and obtain materials, and the county also has to ensure ADA accessibility to the meeting site.
Would you unpack the jurisdictional boundaries?
Yes, Commissioner Miller, through the chair. So the Montecito Planning Commission's jurisdictional boundaries are the area defined in the Montecito Community Plan.
So, to the layman, I would say we are not meeting within the body's jurisdictional boundaries, but I'm sure I misunderstand.
Perhaps, Commissioner Miller, I might need to look into that a little bit more. I'm not.
Okay.
That's the general rule. Perhaps, I know that the Montecito Planning Commission's meeting site is set forth in the bylaws. It's possible that there are provisions for establishing the meeting site.
This is like the Vatican City. We're kind of fit all here. We're in Italy. We're in Hanover County.
But I'd be happy to look into that.
Okay.
So with the changes, the recent changes to the teleconferencing rules, we now have 3 avenues for meeting via teleconference. So there's the traditional teleconferencing rules, we have the COVID or emergency teleconferencing rules, and then we have the new provisions under AB 2449 that we will be introducing today. Oh. Help. Okay. So this should be just a reminder, but we're going to talk about the traditional teleconferencing rules first. So a legislative body may meet by teleconference through audio or video or both for all purposes if all votes are taken by roll call, each location is identified in the agenda, and the agenda is posted at each location. The rights of the public that we just went over are protected at each location, including the right to access and to comment to the body. And at least a quorum of the members have to participate from within the body's jurisdictional boundaries. So under the traditional rules, it is difficult to participate via teleconference at a location that isn't already a public site. So participating from an individual home, for instance, you would have to ensure that the public has the ability to access that home, that it's ADA accessible, et cetera. So when you see the, for example, the board supervisors, when they're meeting via teleconference, it's typically at the 2 hearing rooms, North County and South County, and that's because the county is able to ensure that the rights of the public are protected at those 2 locations. So that's traditional, still available. Moving on to the second.
Brian, just a question, I'm sorry.
Please.
Could you back up, please? The traditional, which is still applicable, is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner Senauer, with all 3 of these, we have traditional, we have COVID/emergency, and then we have the new rules.
Okay.
And all 3 are available.
Okay, and location identified, say it's remote by 1 commissioner or 2, can't be 3, because that's a quorum. You would have to put the address you're at, correct?
Correct.
The location.
Correct.
And post it where? Would that be on the agenda somewhere?
So it would be both identified in the agenda and then posted at the location that
At
you
the
were
location.
participating from.
Okay, thank you.
So the emergency/COVID, to avoid confusion, I think of these as the COVID teleconferencing rules. This is the world we were in during COVID. And this allows legislative bodies to conduct meetings via teleconference without adhering to most of those traditional rules. So there has to be a declared state of emergency, and either a public health officer has recommended social distancing, so that was the COVID infectious disease prong, or Meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health and safety of attendees. So Commissioner Miller, going back to your question earlier in the meeting, renovations of a building, we would be hard pressed to argue that that posed imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees. But those are the two bases we can use to meet via teleconference during an emergency. Either infectious disease, and the health officer has said that we need to social distance, or that meeting in person would present imminent risk. You can imagine a severe weather event that traveling to the site would present a risk. If we have a declared state of an emergency, we can potentially rely on the COVID/emergency teleconferencing rules. So taking us back to COVID, the rules for these for this emergency teleconferencing prong is that the legislative body reconsiders and makes findings within every 30 days on the need to continue to meet remotely. The agency must provide notice and an opportunity for the public to participate remotely, and a physical meeting location is not required, and roll call vote is still required. So I'm sure you all remember meeting during COVID, you have to do a roll call for every single item, but we don't have to provide a physical meeting location. So here's the new stuff, AB 2449. I will just tell you right off the bat, I know that many of us were hoping for more permissive teleconferencing rules to allow commissioners to attend remotely more easily. I'll tell you right up front that these are rather limited provisions for teleconferencing. It does create some opportunities, but they are limited. So the new law, it authorizes a less than majority of the commission to participate remotely under two prongs. We have just cause or emergency circumstances, and I will unpack both of those terms. A quorum of the body still must participate from a single physical location within the body's jurisdictional boundaries that is open to the public and identified in the agenda. So we still need to have a meeting where a quorum is attending in person. And the agency must provide notice and an opportunity for the public to participate remotely. So the Montecito Planning Commission, we already have that set up, but if one of the commissioners is attending remotely, the public also has to have the opportunity to attend remotely. So what does just cause mean? It means childcare or other caregiving of immediate family. The decision maker has a contagious illness, a need related to a physical or mental disability, or travel while on government business. So those are the four reasons that you might have to participate for just cause remotely. And there is a special process for both just cause and emergency. And the process for just cause is that the member notifies the legislative body at the earliest possible opportunity, including at the start of the meeting, of their need to participate remotely for just cause, including a general description of the relevant circumstances. So if you're using just cause at the earliest possible opportunity, you have to let the commission know that you intend to participate remotely, and that can be at the start of the meeting. So if you have a contagious illness, childcare, or other caregiving responsibilities, and you have to participate remotely, you're able to do that at the start of the meeting and inform the commission of that need.
As long as there's a quorum in the physical meeting place.
Commissioner Senauer, absolutely right. So 3 commissioners couldn't do it all at once. Emergency circumstances means a physical or family medical emergency that prevents a member from attending in person. And this process is a little bit different. So for just cause, you can just let the commission know as soon as possible. So for emergency circumstances, the member has to request the legislative body to allow them to participate in the meeting remotely due to emergency circumstances. And the legislative body takes action to approve that request. So the request must be agendized with a general description of the relevant circumstances of the request, excluding personal medical information if time allows. So if you're experiencing, kind of goes against the definition of emergency, but if you're experiencing an emergency and you have time to let staff know that you need to attend remotely, it needs to be agendized if time allows. And at the start of the meeting, the commission would take action on that request to participate remotely.
I guess so in the first one, if I have the measles, I'm under just cause, whatever the first one was titled. But if my arm gets cut off, it's an emergency circumstance because that's not contagious? Is that,
Commissioner
is
Miller-
that the difference?
Commissioner Miller, I would suggest that this statute is not a model of statutory drafting. I wasn't going to draw attention to this, but for an attorney that spends time parsing words, the phrase physical or family medical emergency is not the clearest phrase either. Does physical modify medical as well as family? Or is it a physical emergency or a family medical emergency? I would just suggest, if you have questions about the definitions, about the applicability to your particular circumstances, please reach out to me and I'd happily talk you through it.
Okay, thanks.
So is any amendments to the amendments, this thing? I mean, this is done by Sacramento, I assume, right?
Correct. This is a state statute. My understanding is that there are discussions to modify to expand teleconferencing, and that those discussions are ongoing. I believe that the discussions right now are focused on advisory bodies, so they're trying to liberalize the rules for non-decision-making bodies.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
And just one question, what were you hoping for you may make your comment, as far as modifications that we didn't get that you would have hoped to have seen?
Chair Palicia, I did not have any particular
Okay.
hopes and dreams for
Okay.
these revisions. I'm happy to attend in person with you.
Okay, well, I'm
At
glad
every
you're not
opportunity.
dreaming about this anyway. Okay, I'll
Just
let you go.
A couple more slides, Chair. We're almost done. So the new teleconferencing rules. So members participating through remote teleconferencing must participate through both audio and visual. So you can't just do it by phone. It has to be audio and visual. And very specifically, you must disclose at the meeting whether any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location, and the general nature of the member's relationship with the individual. So if you're participating from home and there's someone else in the room with you, you would have to, another adult, you'd have to disclose that individual's presence and their general relationship with you. And here is the real kicker for the limitations on these new teleconferencing rules. You can't use them all the time. So there are frequency limitations on when you can do this. So there's two prongs to this. A member may not use the just cause provisions for more than 2 meetings in a calendar year. And then within each calendar year, a member may not participate in meetings by teleconference due to just cause or emergency circumstances for a period of more than either 3 consecutive months or above 20% of the regular meetings for the local agency. I have crunched the numbers with Mr. Villalobos. 20% of your regular meetings would be 2-point-something meetings per year, and you can't go above that, so you would be limited to 2 meetings per year that you could rely on either just cause or emergency circumstances. 2 meetings per year.
So is a doctor's note required if you happen to have 3 emergencies in a year, which is more than 2.5?
Commissioner Senauer, through the chair, so there are no provisions in the statute to exceed the limitations on participation. So there's no opportunity as drafted to go beyond the 2 meetings per year for the Montecito Planning Commission. It's different if you met more regularly. So you would be limited to 2 even if you had outside justification for attending remotely.
Is it fair to understand that the word "or" means that, like, we get to pull from both buckets? We could have 2 just causes and no more than 3 consecutive emergency circumstances?
Commissioner Miller, that is, I am fairly certain that is incorrect. I could go back to look at the statute again, but I feel quite confident that it is, you're limited to either of those for both. So it's either just cause or emergency. If you're using one just cause or one emergency or two emergencies or two just cause, you're still limited to two for either of those.
Wouldn't that be and?
I'll meet you in the middle with an and or. How does that sound?
Fair enough.
It's meeting remotely under AB 2449 is maybe what it should say. So
Just
using
get-
remote participation under 2449.
Just get your buckets, Commissioner Miller, all in a row and with signage, so you know.
And with that, I will conclude unless there are additional questions.
Commissioner Stahl, you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Wait,
Brian, would you mind giving us a little bit on how we appear as planning commissioners, say at the county planning commissioner? When you first kind of sat down and tutored me in the arts of Brown Act compliance, it was, don't show up at meetings where there are matters that might come before you, don't start weighing in on topics that before, but this is, if these topics are a river, I understood don't do anything upstream, but we've never really talked about like if I want to go and start complaining about why we don't have more sound walls, a topic dear to my heart, at the county, at the Board of Supervisors level, what is appropriate or not?
Commissioner Miller, through the chair. So today's presentation that we're agendized for is really focused on the teleconferencing rules so again, going back to my earlier comment, there are two different legal concerns here. One has to do with the Brown Act, which prevents a majority of the members of the commission from being in the same place and time to discuss a matter within your subject matter jurisdiction. So that would generally prevent a majority of the members to be at another public hearing in which a matter within the subject matter of your commission is being discussed. There is a specific exemption for public hearings of another legislative body, so long as there's no discussion among the commissioners about that topic other than through the hearing itself. So that is the Brown Act concern for Montecito planning commissioners attending other bodies. And I will be very brief on the second concern, which is really outside the scope of the Brown Act presentation.
Brian, I'm sorry, if I put you on the spot, we can agendize this for a different meeting. I apologize.
So I can certainly just provide the basic idea. So there are also, in addition to Brown Act concerns, procedural or due process concerns, which is that commissioners are required to be impartial when they take action on an adjudicatory item. So these aren't ordinances, zoning changes, general plan, but if it's a permit that's coming before your body or another adjudicatory matter, so if it's something on appeal, something like that, you're required to be impartial when you come in. And so this applies to whether you go before another body or whether you go out in public. There is a concern that if you are discussing that matter, if you are taking positions on that matter, if you are advocating one way or another with respect to that matter, that it undercuts the impartiality that you are required to have when you act as in a judicial, quasi-judicial capacity. So without going into any more specifics, that is the general legal concern that you have to keep in mind when you are making any public statements with respect to an adjudicatory matter that is or might come before your commission.
Even if you, as I have done, qualify it that you are speaking as an individual versus a decision maker.
Commissioner Senhauer, I will preface my response by saying if commissioners have any questions about procedural requirements, due process, the Brown Act, et cetera, I would encourage you to reach out to me individually and we can sort of have a more fulsome conversation about those things. But I will answer your question to say your requirement, your impartiality requirement is not, does not have to do with you acting in your official capacity. It's that you, or it does not have to do with you representing the body. It's that you individually are impartial with respect to that topic. So it wouldn't, that qualification that you described would not itself get you out of our concerns about impartiality.
Any other questions? Thank you for the presentations. Well, very clear, I think.
Excellent. Anytime. Thank you.
David, you have anything further? Or Commissioner?
If we want to propose agenda items that were informally sort of put out there, if we want to be more specific, otherwise not, because it was
Yeah,
brought up.
the other items, flood control, public works, I think it deserves an individual request of them first before we do put something on a.
So, Mr. Chair, just to conclude, we don't have any other business, and we don't have any other discussion items agendized. There were 2 items that we did talk about, the flood control status update, and then
that's-
probably the annual report for the debris nets and having a conversation on that. I will work with you, Chair, on those 2
Okay.
items and agendizing them and coordinating with flood control.
Okay.
And then we will be in touch with the commission as far as the hearing in August.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, with no further ado, I think we should adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.